It's my DraftKings hockey picks for Tuesday, February 11th, and we're starting right now. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Holkamaniacs YouTube channel. If this is your first time here and you want to become a more profitable DraftKings player, start now by subscribing to the channel. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you don't miss anything along the way. Better yet, you want to get into that drawing for 20 DK bucks that I do weekly. Make sure you drop your favorite stack for today's NHL slate in the comments. Holkamaniacs. About last night, Nicklas Backstrom at 6,500. Reasonable game from him, 2 assists, a couple peripherals, only 13.4% ownership in the big GPP. Was pretty surprising to me, to be completely honest. We'd like to see a little bit more from one of the best spots of the entire night, but we'll take that from Backstrom. Couturier, on the other hand, 6,200, and probably one of the chalkiest offenses on the entire slate at 23.1%. Only 2 shots on goal. Definitely going to consider that a failure. That was kind of the story of yesterday in general. Just some of these really chalky plays didn't get there in the end. So Alexander Ovechkin, Roman Josi, 8.8 and 7.9 respectively for those guys. Of course, Ovi still hits the shot on goal bonus, but at 39.1% ownership, if you faded Ovi last night for, say, Nikita Kucherov, something like that at a similar price point, that's really what you needed to get to the top of GPP. So that's unfortunate. Roman Josi, I mean, assist, 3 shots, no blocks, which is, I guess, tougher at that price tag, but I'm still considering both those guys a failure because you're just going to need more to really hit value. We did do well on value, so that's nice to see. Lawton in that Philly game as well at 3,700 gets an assist at just 3.2% ownership, couple peripherals there. Niskanen at 4,200. We were really all over that Philly game, and a couple of the value guys got there, just didn't quite get there with Couturier. The one thing that is nice to see is that we did well 2 nights in a row at goalie. We had Mackinnon at 7,800. We did have Elvis at 73 as well. This is one of the kind of rare times where I felt like both goalies were in play relative to both offenses, and I should say their defense is not giving up a ton of high danger scoring chances on either side. So I thought there was a chance that this game could be a lower scoring game. Didn't end up mattering. Both these guys were reasonable plays at goaltender this past slate. One of the things that I do want to continue to talk about on this page every day is what we have going on in the Discord. So I want to shout out a couple guys that definitely had some great plays for us yesterday. Cody Huffman with the Rittich and Ranta call, a couple other goaltenders. If you didn't want to go the route of McElhinney and Merskowitz, I definitely think that those were great plays. Shout out to Cody. Mikey Boy G with Granlund and Taves, a couple of value options for us that got there. He was definitely all over those yesterday. And one of the newer members to the Discord, Den Cope, was all over the Vancouver Power Play 1 plus Markstrom stack. I'm sure he had a really nice night in GPPs, so shout out to those guys. Well, let's jump into today's Tuesday slate. Per usual, we're going to walk through the data sheet. This is available to all my Twitch subscribers in the Discord. I kind of walk through game environment here and talk about some potential stacking targets. If you have some questions about this sheet, I do have a more detailed video that breaks down each and every kind of column that we have here and why we use these. That video is up in the Discord, pinned in the NHL channel. But let's walk through today, guys. And I do think that it's a really interesting slate. Tuesdays, we get some nice contests on both DraftKings and FanDuel. So one of the things that we should probably talk about right away is what I really like to do on this sheet is really kind of try and identify really good pace situations and good game environment. So the first game that really stands out to me from that perspective, 2 teams that give up a lot of Corsi against, New Jersey and Florida, will be playing each other today. And the one thing that is at least interesting is both of these offenses really are producing a ton of low danger scoring chances, which isn't really ideal from a fantasy perspective. So there could certainly be volume in this game. I have some concerns about its ceiling overall, but I definitely think that there's going to be some options that we could go to on both sides of the puck here. Florida still with a nice team total, even though they are on the road. And I do think that there's some guys on New Jersey that are a little bit underpriced for this spot as well. So in terms of the matchup overall, I'm not sure if it's elite by any means. So I would be shocked if I ended up really stacking up this game overall or on either of these teams, but is a nice pace situation if you wanted a one-off from one of those teams. I do think one of the teams that I will be all over today is the Colorado Avalanche. So let's put them as our first stack of today that we would be considering. I do think that that's a really nice total for them, but it's just the matchup couldn't be much better, guys. Ottawa, if we just want to look at their Corsi against over the last 25 games, 63.7 leads the slate. They're high dangers, mostly neutral. The problem with, I guess, Colorado overall is that their Corsi numbers offensively are nice, but they're not generating a ton of high danger opportunities. But we do know exactly where the production is coming from in Colorado. There's always value in that. So I think that that's still a spot that I would be really interested in today. And then overall, if we want to look at some kind of better, I guess, high danger environment situations here, one of the ones that really stands out to me overall today is the Edmonton Oilers. I think they're going to be the next stack that I'm going to be looking to jam in. Make sure you keep an eye on Connor McDavid. He did leave practice yesterday, so if he ends up playing, you're going to have to make that call how healthy he is, but also it could affect guys like Leon Draisaitl and what could happen to that power play overall without McDavid if he was to sit. So I do think that at the time of this recording, that's something that I'm going to be paying attention to as the day goes on. Maybe he's fine, but I do think the matchup couldn't be much better. The Chicago team, third in high danger scoring chances against over the entire season. If we're just looking at the low danger chances over the entire season, they really don't give up a ton of those either. The lowest on the entire slate. So from this perspective, an Edmonton team that has been playing a lot better lately offensively. So if we get sort by their plus minus over the last 10 games versus the last 25, Edmonton has actually really turned it on lately in terms of their volume, which I love to see that. Great matchup against Chicago, like I said before, but I just think there's a ton of upside here. It is one of the later games, so that's something we haven't talked about yet. Really stacking up the later games really gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of late swap. If you have some one-offs on some Edmonton stacks that really just don't start off well, maybe you move off the Edmonton stack at that point and really try and go the lower ownership route, something that I'm always trying to do in tournaments. So I like Edmonton quite a bit, which neither of those plays are really going to be, I think, super unique today. But let's keep pushing through a little bit here, guys. So in terms of some of the Corsi against situations, we talked about how Ottawa is a fantastic matchup. We talked about this Florida game. What about this Philadelphia spot again after everyone kind of went there yesterday, kind of a little bit of flop lag? I do think that it's an interesting spot against the Islanders, who are giving up a lot of Corsi. I would say slightly above average in terms of the high danger, but I think it's mostly neutral there. So I don't know if Philly would be a full stack scenario for me. One of the ones that we probably skipped over too quickly was a spot for the New York Rangers. So it's an interesting one. I wish they were at home. Winnipeg's a team we've been targeting similar to San Jose most of the season, and it's because of this high danger that they've been allowing, but also volume overall. It's a really good spot for the Rangers, a team that does generate a ton of high danger chances overall. If we just look at their Corsi for over the last 10 games, they're leading the slate at 62.5. So I actually think that the Rangers could be an interesting sneaky stack today. I like both sides of this game if I'm being completely honest. So let's go to the pace. Definitely in the top tier in terms of the pace overall, and I think that the Winnipeg side of this game, if you did want to go there, it's a pretty similar spot, honestly. The Rangers are giving up an above average amount of Corsi. It's definitely a team that's been playing better defensively lately in terms of that, but they're an above average team in terms of their high danger against. I guess the main knock on Winnipeg is they're just not one of those teams that generates a ton of high danger chances anyway, but they are at home, and it is a pretty solid matchup. So I'm willing to actually, I think, stack up both sides of this game if we want. So let's put the Rangers and the Jets on our list for today. The next one that I think we should always talk about, I guess you should say always talk about, just because they're just such a great offensive team. We've seen the ceiling with Toronto. It pains me, I guess, to say that they'd be a target today for me in terms of stacks against my Arizona Coyotes. Neutral, I say slightly below average in terms of the high danger that Arizona has been giving up. But this Toronto team just has so much firepower. We know exactly where to go with guys like Jonathan Tavares, with guys like Austin Matthews. So Austin Matthews against Arizona Coyotes, always some interesting narratives involved there. Definitely think he's one of, if not the top center option on the entire slate. So I definitely have some interest in Toronto. Let's see if we can uncover anything a little bit more contrarian today. I would say that maybe Dallas would be in play for tournaments. I think a lot of people will avoid Carolina just because the narrative surrounding them is that they're this elite defensive team, but the volume that they do allow, a lot of it is on the high danger side of things, and Dallas is a team that overall will generate chances, just not a ton of high danger, but maybe in this scenario with Carolina, one of those teams that gives up a lot of high danger, maybe Dallas ends up being one of those teams like just outside the top tier in implied totals that goes a little bit under owned. So I'll put Dallas on the stack targets today. I think that's interesting. Let's talk through the positions today. At center, talked about Austin Matthews, but I feel like I've brought him up on almost every show so far. So let's start with my boy Nathan MacKinnon today. I do think that he's someone that I'll be willing to pay up for, even at 8,500. Still think he's a very solid play today, especially in this matchup. 98th percentile shot prediction, 95th percentile Corsi 4 over the last 15. You know the song and dance here with Nathan MacKinnon. Elite peripheral guy, definitely going to have a lot of time on ice as well. Do you know how much this first power play unit plays typically as well relative to the other ones? 90th percentile shots plus blocks. The thing that I really like about this, obviously, is the spot. Their top 4 implied total, second highest pace game versus Ottawa, highest Corsi against over the last 25 on the slate. So fantastic spot for Colorado players to hit their ceiling today. I'm sure they're going to be popular, but I think he'd be a building block for me today. Leon Draisaitl. I mentioned that the injury with Connor McDavid, you really have to ask yourself how much that hurts Draisaitl. But like if you're just looking purely at the data, Draisaitl is pretty underpriced actually, even at 7,700 for where some of these other studs are at. 99th percentile shots plus blocks, 96th percentile shot prediction, 98th percentile Corsi 4 over the last 15 days. We know Corsi 4 is probably the most predictive metric at the center position in particular. So I'm interested in him for sure. 86th percentile power play shot attempts. I like to look at that over the last 15 days as well, just because get an idea of what type of guys they're trying to set up on the power play. Really valuable in terms of really targeting some of these studs. So versus Chicago, like I mentioned before, third highest percentage of high danger chances against on the season. So definitely think they're always going to be a target for us, especially with some of these elite options that we do have in Edmonton. Moving on to the winger position, you guys might not know who this is on the picture. Blake Coleman. I had a nice view of this guy in college, most of the time from my spot that I occupied most often in the middle bench. But I do think that Blake Coleman is a guy that I'm interested in today. The New Jersey Devils, we didn't talk about them in the stack section as a full stack opportunity, but this is the one-off that I had in mind. So he's 6K on DraftKings, he's 4,700 on FanDuel, 99th percentile shots plus blocks over the last 15 days, 98th percentile shot prediction. So I definitely think that he's someone that is just underpriced at 6K, to be completely honest. 98th percentile shot attempts over the last 15 days, and then the power play shot attempts are there in 79th percentile. 54%, 9% of the team power play time over the last 3 games is going to be that unit. The next kind of combination they have is only at 15.5% of the time. So I definitely think that Coleman is someone they're highlighting. Without a ton of weapons there, I think that there's always value in something like that. Their DraftKings salary is what my biggest concern is. He's actually up $1,600 over the past month. FanDuel, his price has barely moved. So I think at $4,700 on FanDuel, he's basically free relative to his peripheral. So he'd be one of my first guys in if I'm building cash games on FanDuel today. Kyler Yamamoto, I mentioned how Draisaitl is someone that would be a target of mine today. I think there's no issues with pairing him with Kyler Yamamoto. Keep an eye on the McDavid injury again, but I think that Yamamoto at 4,800 is still at a decent price point. He's a 95th percentile Corsi 4 guy over the last 15 days. He does stack with Draisaitl on Edmonton's second line, but he doesn't play power play minutes, so that's something that you have to keep in mind in terms of the ceiling. But I do think that if you're playing Yamamoto, you're probably playing Draisaitl with him. The one problem, I guess, is actually, let's start with Chicago. We mentioned that they do have high danger chances against one of the top matchups on the slate for that. They're also allowing the fourth most Corsi against on the slate over the last 25 games. So that's interesting. The concern I always have with Kyler Yamamoto is just the overall lack of peripherals in general. I could have listed all of those here in terms of the major wing categories, but 39th to 69th percentile, just really not that great. But I do like to see the 95th percentile Corsi 4 metric there. That at least means he's kind of carrying the play a little bit, which at 4,800 in this spot, I think that it's kind of one of those ones where you can kind of close your eyes and jam into those Edmonton stacks and feel okay about it. I guess it's a common theme today, but I'm all over Edmonton. Oscar Clough for the Edmonton Oilers, 6,400 on DraftKings, 5,400 on FanDuel. He does have a 94th percentile shots plus blocks number. One of the things I'm definitely focusing on at the defense position, trying to grab some of these guys that can get me that block bonus as well as offer a little bit of upside. 94th percentile blocks over the past month, very solid. 92nd percentile in time on ice. Time on ice is one of those metrics that I really focus on at the defense position in particular. It's just one of those ones that translates a little bit better. So over the last 15 days, very solid. Clough, 88th percentile in shot prediction, 77th percentile Corsi. Gets really nice, I guess, overall metrics from Clough in terms of targeting those peripheral stats. And you can stack him with Draisaitl on Edmonton Powerplay 1. So if you wanted to go with something like Clough and Draisaitl, maybe you did want to add in Yamamoto, I think you could probably do that as well. But nice to have that correlation on the Powerplay with Clough. Essa Lindell for Dallas. So we've talked about a lot of higher price guys, and I think that we're going to need a little bit of value today. I typically don't like to I like to do this at the winger position ideally. So if we get some kind of value that opens up at the winger position, that'll be something we certainly talk about in the Discord. But I do like Essa Lindell's price today at 3,900 on DraftKings. He's 3,900 on FanDuel as well. You guys tell me, what do you think? Like, let's look at this. 94th percentile shots plus blocks, the same as Oscar Clough. 95th percentile blocks over the past month, very similar. 89th percentile time on ice, okay, similar. This is where it gets bad though. 56th percentile shot prediction, 52nd percentile Corsi 4. So that's the difference for me versus a guy like Oscar Clough and Essa Lindell. I think Essa Lindell definitely has the floor, has some of the peripherals that we are looking for in terms of trying to find value at the defense position. I just don't know if the ceiling is that high, but I do like Essa Lindell. I mentioned that game environment actually might be a little bit sneaky today, so I have a little bit of interest in him. Carolina does allow the fourth fewest Corsi against over the last 25, but the second highest percent of high danger. So maybe that kind of wrinkle on the matchup would give Essa Lindell a little bit more upside, but I do think the price is at least, it puts him in play for me. Let's say that. Hopefully I'm not completely jinxing us here, but goalie's been going pretty well over the last couple slates, so let's keep that rolling. The first guy I want to talk about, Phillip Grube for the Colorado Avalanche. You're going to have to pay a premium for this guy, 8,500 on both sites, but 90th percentile team wins over the last 10 games, 7-1-2. That's always something we want when targeting goalies, teams that are playing well, right? That win is just so important. He does have a 99th percentile Vegas moneyline rating versus Ottawa. It's one of the biggest favorites that we've seen in the last couple of days. Certainly think that that's a big part of it as well. The team implied total is greater than 3.5 goals, one of the thresholds that I'm certainly looking for, goaltender. And I think that Colorado, fifth lowest percentage in high danger chances against, is certainly something that I'm paying attention to, because if he's going to be seeing shots, I would definitely like to see the shots come from the outside and not from the high danger areas of the offensive zone. Mckenzie Blackwood from New Jersey. I do think that both of these guys currently not confirmed at the time of this video recording. So make sure you check that you have the starting goaltenders. Is something, again, we'll continue to kind of make sure we have the right guys. If you're in the Discord, that's another thing. We'll keep an eye on the beat writers for you in terms of that. But Blackwood at 7,400. They just haven't moved his price much. It's really an interesting scenario. 4-3-3 over the last 10 games, but they've won 2 straight. And in those 2 games, back-to-back shutouts for Mckenzie Blackwood. So it's a really interesting spot. This is what I really like about New Jersey goaltenders. New Jersey is second highest Corsi against, but the second lowest percent in high danger scoring chances against. This is on this slate, but I do think that that's a really interesting scenario. And that's what I'm trying to target when I'm looking at goaltenders. I want to be getting goaltenders from teams that allow shots, sure, just not really high danger shots, because they're just more apt to not give up as many goals, of course, but still rack up saves. So I definitely like that. Florida, third highest percent of low danger chances for. The pieces they just fit with Mckenzie Blackwood for me today. So I think that the price point is really, it's a nice spot. If you can't get up to someone like Grubauer, probably is a little bit safer. I think that Blackwood is interesting. Like, ride the hot goaltender, never a bad idea. If you want to learn more about how to be a profitable DraftKings player, make sure you hit the subscribe icon in the bottom right-hand corner if you haven't already. But more importantly, come hang out with us in the Discord. This video goes up in the morning. There's a lot that happens throughout the day. We mentioned the McDavid injury. Let's walk through that together. So the Discord link is in the description. Come hang out with us. I'll see you soon.